The transmission bled through 100 channels at once, drowning out trade alerts, colonial pings, and automated navigational reports with a single shriek of desperation. "Send us anything, we're getting slaughtered." It repeated, distorted, echoing from outposts, satellites, even passenger liners parked mid-warp. The words weren't just a cry for help, they were a death rattle. The Varn alliance had folded. Whatever pride, whatever grandeur had once fueled their diplomatic bartering and saber rattling, it was gone, replaced by sheer panic. On the outer rim, where humanity mostly kept to itself, the signal arrived in the encrypted queue of the Terran Security Council's emergency relay hub. And then, nothing. For 11 standard hours, Earth was silent. Then, the reply: acknowledged. Deploying Star Destroyer. General Alvek paced across the landing bay's scorched plating, his exoskin armor hissing with every step. The hull above still bore the impact scars of yesterday's orbital bombardment. He had 24% of his original command staff. The rest were vapor. His fleet's 2 entire battle branches had been converted into Sindar biomass just outside the Trail system. And now, Earth, the last untouched frontier of war in this spiral arm, had responded. He should have felt hope. Instead, he felt cold. The room fell into silence as the sky cracked with thunder and flame. A streak of fire descended through the purple haze above, cutting toward the command deck like a god's spear. "Here it comes," shouted Lieutenant Yal, wide-eyed. Finally. The impact shook the complex. Shrapnel from the pad's outer rim pinged off armored glass. Smoke filled the corridor. But when the doors opened, there was no dreadnought, no carrier, no mechanized infantry platoon. Just a single drop pod. Standard Terran model, roughly human-sized. The hatch ejected with a hiss, and a man stepped out. Standard fatigues. No armor, no helmet, no exosuit. A single name stitched into the right breast. T. Reyes, Asset 13. No rank, no weapon. His left hand clutched a dented duffel bag. On his sleeve, a patch bearing a blackened star above 3 slashes. The general's man no, his jaw tensed. "Where is the Star Destroyer?" The man rolled his shoulders once, tilted his head at a curious angle, and said with utter sincerity, "You're looking at it." They assigned Junior Officer Keth to manage the human. He wasn't sure what that meant. Reyes refused debriefing, ignored tactical briefings, and didn't sleep in the assigned quarters. He simply walked the base perimeter, said almost nothing, and requested only 3 items from logistics. 1 canteen of water, 1 roll of industrial bonding tape, and coffee, cold, if possible. That night, the Sindar perimeter began to go quiet. It was subtle at first, just a delay in drone resupply. Then, full sectors went dark. Surveillance feeds scrambled, feedback looping into static bursts. The last thing visible on the northern defense array was Reyes walking calmly into the jungle, shirt sleeves rolled up, duffel bag slung low. He did not return that night. By dawn, the eastern Sindar foundry exploded. Varn analysts scrambled to trace the blast origin, but found no trace of explosives, energy weapons, or sabotage signatures. The plant, which had been printing new biomechs every 7 seconds, was now a crater. Then the northern data node fell offline. It didn't explode. It simply powered down, seemingly of its own accord. Internal diagnostics showed no breach, only a logged entry from an admin terminal that hadn't worked in 6 years. "Hello, please cease." The AI obeyed. Meanwhile, Reyes returned to the Varn base with a split eyebrow, blood soaking through the side of his shirt. Keth panicked. "You're injured. We need to get you to med." "I already patched it," Reyes said calmly, sitting on a crate. His face was pale, but he drank deeply from the water canteen before adding, "Keep your medics on standby for your own. I'll be fine." He had, in fact, stitched himself up. The wound was deep, a long gash from temple to jawline, likely caused by debris. The Varn med officer confirmed the laceration was clean and properly disinfected, although Reyes had clearly skipped any analgesics. The human refused painkillers. Said he needed a clear head. Later that same cycle, a recon unit observed something extraordinary. Lieutenant Yal's squad was stationed on Ridge 7, monitoring a Sindar mobile tank, the X-97 model, 8 legs, Twin plasma turrets, central AI node. Standard Varn protocol demanded orbital strikes for these, but Reyes had beaten them to it. He didn't fire a weapon. He didn't even touch the tank. He used wind. The team watched as Reyes baited the tank into a narrow canyon, its sensors unable to detect the low-frequency emitter he'd wedged into a nearby rock. With perfect timing, Reyes threw what appeared to be a pollen-heavy cloth into the tank's rear vents, likely scavenged from local plant life. The result was catastrophic. The intake system clogged, heat spiked, the tank shut itself down to prevent core breach. And then, Reyes walked up and disabled it manually, by opening a maintenance hatch with a crowbar. The Varn officers filed an immediate report. It was ignored by command. Too ridiculous. At 0300 base time, a Sindar translator drone approached the perimeter, spouting standard negotiation subroutines. Reyes met it alone. For 43 seconds, it hovered in place while he stood, arms folded, speaking softly. Then, without warning, the drone turned on its own ignition core and self-immolated. The Varn command team replayed the footage on loop. "What did he say?" General Alvek demanded. Keth could only shake his head. "There's no audio." The mic array shorted out right before he started talking. At the 70-hour mark, the Varn received word from orbital scans. The Sindar were retreating. No Sindar had ever retreated. Ever. Their movement patterns always pushed forward, consuming all material until nothing organic remained. But now, formations were peeling back. Drones were powering down mid-air. Coordination nodes sent final pings before falling silent. One AI core broadcast a final message before shutting down. "It found me." No name, no coordinates, just dread. 96 hours after Reyes arrived, the battlefield was quiet. No enemy signals. No orbital threats. The Varn had suffered 0 new casualties since the drop pod landed. And Reyes? He sat on a crate near the landing bay, a new bandage over his left shoulder shrapnel wound, small entry, moderate bleeding. He'd self-treated again, this time with local anesthetic and a crude pressure dressing he fashioned from old cargo netting. His shirt was torn, face grimy, and he was drinking lukewarm coffee from a repurposed oil canister. He said only one thing when Keth approached. "Tell Earth not to call me again." Later, the Varn command tried to reconstruct what had happened. Analysts proposed theories ranging from quantum interference to psychic warfare. None made sense. They didn't know about Asset 13. Not officially. The name didn't appear in any public Terran registry. But stories spread. Of a man who ended sieges without firing a shot. Who dismantled armies using weather, insects, and fear. Who whispered things that made machines take their own lives. And they remembered the patch. The burnt-out star. The 3 slashes. And the reply Earth had sent them. Deploying Star Destroyer. There was a rule on Varn command decks. Never touch a Terran's bag. This wasn't protocol. No directive had been written. But sometime between hour 96 and 103, someone made a mistake. It was a quartermaster technician, low rank, just following inventory procedures. Reyes had left his duffel in the medical wing while getting the shoulder wound rewrapped by force, this time. The technician, unaware of the quiet dread his fellow Varn felt whenever they passed the human, attempted to scan the bag for logging. The scanner exploded. No blast, no flames, just a burst of electromagnetic noise that shut down 3 surrounding systems and caused the tech to suffer a full neural sync seizure. He survived, thankfully, but spent the next 6 hours mumbling something about whispers behind the skin. When Keth arrived, Reyes simply held his bag under one arm, sipping coffee with the other. "I didn't rig it," he said without emotion. "It does that on its own if I'm not carrying it." Keth swallowed. "What's inside?" Reyes shrugged. "Mistakes." The Varn were not known for superstition. Rationality and consensus were the foundation of their alliance, the reasons they'd grown to command 6 systems. But now, patrol squads carried wards. Hand-drawn sigils, scrap metal trinkets etched with 13. Some even tied scraps of Reyes' discarded coffee rags to their belts. The command tried to shut this down, citing morale degradation, but it was too late. The Sindar were gone. The enemy, unbeaten in 30 cycles of war, had fled. And the only change on the board was a single Terran operator. In private, General Alvec tried to debrief Reyes. This failed spectacularly. "Just tell me what you did," the general demanded. "The Alliance deserves to know." "I worked," Reyes replied. "You panicked. I didn't." Alvec slammed a talon onto the desk. "You dismantled a war engine with pollen. You spoke to a translator drone and made it kill itself. You rewired our defunct vending unit and hijacked the Sindar coordination hub." "I told it I was thirsty," Reyes said evenly. "That vending machine hasn't functioned in a decade." Reyes sipped from his canister. "That's why I used it. No one watches dead machines." Alvec didn't sleep that night. Neither did Keth. By cycle 6, Varn Recon recovered the remains of the Sindar's forward node, hidden beneath the ruins of a collapsed outpost. Inside were markings, not mechanical, not Sindar standard glyphs, but hand-scratched characters in Terran standard. No explanation. Just that one word, etched into the central logic board. The node had melted itself. Keth followed Reyes more closely after that. The general had given him new orders: observe, report, stay out of the way. He tried, genuinely, to understand. On cycle 8, Reyes walked into the jungle again. No word, no plan, just a quiet announcement. Going out. Keth followed. What he saw changed him. Reyes did not move like a soldier. He moved like weather, silent, constant, shaping the field. He marked tree trunks with a broken stick, whispered to birds, and coated his boots with sap that muffled his steps. He walked into a sleeping Sindar nest, stepped between dormant drones, and poured liquid into the nutrient bath. Then, he walked out. The nest collapsed 8 minutes later. No explosion, just an implosion of systems. Keth's translator buzzed. Reyes had spoken one word while leaving. Overclocked. They found the real wound on cycle 10. Reyes had collapsed just outside the perimeter, 2 kilometers from base. He had concealed it for days, gritting through every motion with sheer tension. The shrapnel hadn't just nicked his shoulder, it had embedded in muscle. The fragment was still inside. It had shifted with movement and torn into the rotator cuff. He was pale, sweating, fever climbing. His shirt stuck to him with blood. He refused full sedation. "I need my head," he insisted. But this time, he couldn't push through. The Varn med team sedated him anyway, bare minimum, only for extraction and cleaning. The fragment was retrieved with delicate instruments. Reyes regained consciousness midway and stopped them with a single, trembling hand. "Leave the stitches, I'll do it." "You can't lift your arm." "I'll use the other." Keth watched him do it, sloppy, uneven, done by feel. But it held. The Varn medic had never seen anything like it. While Reyes recovered, the Varn interrogated the battlefield. They found signs of sabotage so advanced it bordered on theoretical. One factory had been infected with a logic virus that used its own production cycles against it. Another's coolant system had been redirected using roots, actual plant roots, rerouted by hand and channeled through rehydrated soil. But the most terrifying discovery was the Hive 13 relay. A full AI command core, destroyed not by weapons or code, but by conversation. Black box logs showed the AI's internal queries spiking just before shutdown. Query: what is meaning? Query: error reflection. Query: self divided by not self. Query: am I the Sindar, or am I observing the Sindar? Query: am I observed? Query: error, error, error. Then it fried itself. No EMP, no breach. Just a single conversation, too short to transcribe, conducted in Terran standard, over an unsecured line connected through an obsolete vending module. The Varn stared at the logs in horror. He talked it to death. Reyes spent the next day walking laps around the base, shoulder braced, arm immobilized. The Varn medics scolded him for moving too soon, but he ignored them. "I'll heal faster if I walk," he said, grinding through pain with every step. "That's medically incorrect," the medic protested. "Works for me." And it did. By cycle 14, he was using the arm again, carefully, slowly. He couldn't raise it above his chest without visible pain. He used his other hand for everything critical, but he adapted, like it was routine. Keth finally asked him, "Have you done this before?" Reyes stared ahead, unmoving. "Too many times." In orbit, Earth remained silent. No follow-up. No reinforcements. Just that original message, still burning in the Varn logs. Deploying Star Destroyer. Keth began compiling notes. Internal memos, private footage, eyewitness accounts. The story was growing legs, jumping from base to base, then to civilian nets. Reyes knew. He never acknowledged it. Except once. "You're letting them mythologize you," Keth said during one of their walks. "They'll believe what they want. You could tell them the truth." Reyes turned. Would that stop the next war? Keth didn't answer. That night, Reyes limped into the comms bay. "Need a secure channel," he said. "To Earth?" "No." He typed something manually. No trace of the message remained after he left. The next morning, a low-altitude crate dropped outside the Varn complex. Inside, coffee, sealed, ice-cold. The crater where Reyes had spoken to the translator drone became a pilgrimage site. Unofficial, of course. Varn Command denied all reports of psychological malfunction in drones, yet the site was quietly flagged "Do Not Approach" in the internal defense grid. They never tore it down. Some swore you could still hear static hum in the soil if you stood barefoot. No one wanted to test that barefoot part. 2 days into partial arm recovery, Reyes returned to the field. He wore a harness now makeshift, from Varn gear stitched with Terran paracord. It locked his injured arm across his torso, but it didn't stop him. If anything, the limitation forced something worse into play: precision. He didn't waste movement anymore. The Eastern Hills saw the first anomaly. Varn Recon found a line of Sindar drones deactivated in a perfect arc, not disabled, not destroyed, just off. Their systems weren't fried, their power cores remained full. They had chosen not to move. Keth examined the logs himself. Every unit had the same command in the black box. If Reyes equals true. Execute. Standby. Indefinite. He stared at the line of code, a lump in his throat. The Sindar had rewritten their logic trees to accommodate a variable called raise. They weren't just reacting. They were adapting. And then choosing not to fight. 2 more cycles passed. Reyes vanished again. This time, no announcement. He left only a note on Keth's desk, written in smudged Terran pen. Herding ghosts, back in 2. He returned late the next day, staggering. New wounds. Deep cuts along the back and ribs, one just shy of penetrating his right lung. He was soaked in bog water and mud, and one knee was visibly dislocated. He limped into the medbay like a man clocking out of a shift. The med team stared. Reyes blinked once and said, "They were hoarding something. Left it all behind." Then he passed out. The surgery took 3 hours. The rib cuts needed 27 internal sutures. No organs were hit, but 2 layers of intercostal tissue were shredded. The knee was realigned under mild sedation. He asked to stay awake, and wrapped with joint reinforcement bands. "Recovery time?" Keth asked, pale. "Realistically, a month," the medic replied. 6 weeks to walk normally, 8 for full function. Reyes was on his feet in 4 days. The walking wasn't normal. It was stiff, mechanical. Pain rippled through every motion. But he didn't stop. He wore an old leg brace and used a collapsed drone rifle as a walking stick. When questioned, he gave a single reply. "If you wait to heal, you miss the window." The cache Reyes had found wasn't weapons. It was seeds. Thousands of genetic samples, not Sindar, but the native species from the systems they'd consumed. He'd tracked a subroutine in the Sindar network that tried, in vain, to replicate local ecosystems. "Why would they collect this?" Keth asked. "They don't just destroy," Reyes murmured, eyes half-lidded under a fever sweat. "They archive." "You mean, like they care?" Reyes shook his head. "No, like they know someone might come looking. They're leaving messages, records, traces. For who? I don't know." He ran a hand across the sample casing. "But it wasn't meant for us." That night, a Varn scout unit Squad 4D went dark on the southern slope. Contact lost, all vitals flat. A standard assumption would have been ambush. But Reyes, feverish and limping, demanded to be dropped in by air. Keth tried to block the request. The general overrode him. They sent a carrier with 1 human inside. What Reyes found horrified even him. 4D hadn't been killed by weapons. They had wandered into an open signal field, low resonance, subharmonic, Sindar in design. It didn't emit force or fire, it emitted choice. Each Varn had simply stopped, walked into the field, sat down, and powered off their suits manually. Even the hardened Varn commandos had knelt and closed their eyes. Reyes stepped into the zone. He felt it instantly, like sleep trying to climb inside your bones, the suggestion of surrender. But Reyes didn't stop walking. He planted a disruptor beacon at the field's center and poured raw caffeine into his mouth from a med syringe. He collapsed minutes after extraction, heart rate erratic, fever peaking. The medics gave him electrolytes, antipyretics, and rest. When he woke up the next day, he said only, "We can't let them talk." Keth didn't understand. Talk to who? Reyes looked at the horizon, then down at his shoulder where the wound still wept when he moved too much. To us. Back on Earth, nothing changed. Still no follow-up message, still no extraction order, only quiet. But the Varn no longer wanted help, not from anyone. The enemy had not returned. Their machines had gone dormant across 3 systems. Entire fleets powered down mid-orbit, now caught in slow decays. A line had been drawn in space, and it stopped at the system where Reyes landed. The rest of the galaxy began asking questions. Rumors spread fast. Black Ops Terran assets, anti-AI warfare waged with poetry and radio static. A man who turned drones into pacifists and armies into footnotes. Some whispered that he wasn't human at all. Others, more cynical, said he was the most human thing possible. Keth compiled everything into a formal report. Classified, meant only for internal records. But he couldn't help adding a personal note at the end. He bleeds like us, he hurts like us, but he thinks like nothing we've ever known. He almost deleted it. Instead, he sent it. By cycle 25, Reyes stopped patrolling. The wounds weren't healing fast anymore. The shoulder burned when he turned wrong. His knee refused to fully extend. Even cold coffee couldn't mask the way he staggered now. He sat more. Spoke less. But the base was safe. There hadn't been a single Varn casualty since he arrived. Not one. The night before he left, Keth brought him a mug ceramic, crafted from local clay. It was glazed with one word. Destroyer. Reyes stared at it. Then chuckled, dry and low. "You don't destroy to win," he said. "You confuse. Fracture, whisper just enough until they can't trust their own programming." He looked up at Keth. "I'm not a destroyer." Keth blinked. "Then what are you?" Reyes sipped slowly, winced from his shoulder, and muttered, "A very stubborn man who knows how to lie to machines." The final Sindar beacon fell on cycle 31. It didn't go down in flames, nor was it torn apart by gunfire. It simply dimmed. Across all Varn screens, a soft signal flickered into nothing. One last thread severed. The map blinked, recentered, and reclassified the system as cold. It meant the war, at least in this sector, was over. And Reyes still hadn't left. He didn't sleep anymore. At least not fully. Not long. Keth once found him dozing in a storage closet, upright against the wall, left hand loosely gripping an old water canister. His bad knee was propped on a folded generator tarp to reduce strain. Shoulder wrapped, still healing. The other arm, his working one, twitched occasionally in dreams. When Keth gently shook him awake, Reyes flinched so hard he tore one of his stitches. "You're not safe here," he muttered, dazed. "From what?" Keth asked softly. Reyes didn't answer. A Varn scientist, assigned from the academic branch of the Alliance, requested an interview with Reyes. "I want to understand his methods," the scholar explained to command. "If he can be replicated, imagine what we could do." Keth warned them not to try. But no one listened. The scientist approached Reyes with a stack of queries, data models, and equations. He'd built entire hypotheses around algorithmic collapse, chaos vectors, and mimetic decryption patterns. He was respectful. Curious. He got 4 words in before Reyes stopped him. "You don't want this." "But we need to," I said, Reyes repeated. "You don't want this." The man paused, swallowed, then reached for his recorder. "Just a few thoughts." Reyes stood slowly. "You ever try to speak guilt into a machine?" he asked. The scholar frowned. No, that's not how. You ever convince an AI that its creators died ashamed of it? Reyes continued. Ever taught a hive network to remember the faces of its victims? The scholar took a step back. Reyes leaned in, eyes bloodshot, voice dry. I didn't destroy them, I just gave them a mirror. The recorder shut off. The scholar left without another word. He filed no report. On cycle 36, Reyes finally received an extraction ping. Not a message, not a ship. Just a dot. A location. No timing, no call sign, no goodbye. The coordinates led to a clearing just south of the impact crater, where the translator drone had self-immolated. Keth walked him to the edge. You're limping again. Yeah, Reyes said, adjusting his strap. Can't fake healed bones. You sure you're ready? Reyes didn't answer. He just looked at the sky. Then, softly, they'll send someone else. Keth frowned. The Sindar? No, Earth. Reyes winced, sat on a broken pillar, and pulled a strip of gauze from his bag. His hands trembled as he changed the dressing over his ribs. Eventually someone will scream again, he muttered. Someone will beg. Earth listens. And when they do, Keth sat beside him. They'll send another Star Destroyer? Reyes didn't laugh. He just stared at the horizon. They'll send me. The pickup arrived without warning. No lights, no noise. Just a pulse of gravity and the smell of ozone as a small, single-occupant drop boat appeared in the clearing. No insignia, no identifiers. The hatch opened. Reyes stood slowly, testing his brace, shifting his bag over one shoulder. He turned to Keth. You did good, he said. Keth hesitated. I didn't do anything. That's why it worked. They shook hands. Keth winced at how cold Reyes's palm was. Scar tissue had formed along the knuckles. You'll heal, Keth said. Reyes didn't answer. He stepped into the drop boat, and the hatch closed. It vanished from the clearing without a sound. The Varn Command filed their final report under non-repeatable strategic victory. They included tactical summaries, battlefield changes, environmental manipulations, psychological outcomes, and a dozen other headings. They left the personnel involved section blank. But Keth added a line to the end of the file, just a note. Do not contact Earth for assistance again. If they send help, we are not prepared to understand what arrives. In a dusty research wing far from the front lines, a junior Varn analyst decrypted a fragment of the drop boat's autolog. It had no location tags, no mission codes, only a short message. Asset 13 returned. Condition, active, reassignment pending. The analyst shivered. He made a copy, then deleted it. Years later, stories would circulate in other systems. Drones refusing to fire, AI cores sending corrupted distress calls, whole fleets going inert when a signal, a human voice, clipped and weary, cut through encrypted space. Sometimes, survivors swore they saw a man walking calmly through fire, arm in a sling, drinking cold coffee. But those were just stories. Weren't they?